Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is time for Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to turn uncertainty to your greatest competitive advantage. Now, I am super pumped today. I've got one of my brand new peers, my brand new friend, somebody I'm going to team up and do a lot with, here to talk to you about unbelievable strategies to not only turn uncertainty to competitive advantage, but literally build a millionaire mindset. Johnny Wimbrey has an unbelievable story and an unbelievable set of strategies and ideas for you. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, Meridith Elliott Powell here. I don't want to waste another minute talking about anything else but Johnny Wimbrey. Now, I got to tell you that I was lucky enough to sit next to Johnny while we were sitting there listening to the incredible Les Brown do his stuff. And Johnny, I don't know if you remember, you said to me, God, he is about the best, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've seen him around the world, and no one can rip it up like Mr. Les Brown.
So ever since we met in Denver, Colorado, I have been studying up on you, and you have got quite a story. So for those in our audience who don't know you, who haven't had the opportunity to meet, to see, and to engage with Johnny Wimbrey, give us your background, give us your story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meredith. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's an extreme honor and a pleasure. It's an extreme honor to sit next to you and just watch the legend go live and just to see and feel, our chemistry just automatically connect off the bat.
Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Strategies to turn uncertainty into competitive advantage. That is my life. Like that literal title is my life. My first book, which is called From the Hood to Doing Good. I wrote this book when I was 22 years old. I'm 49 now. And when I wrote this book, the subtitle of the book is actually the title. It's From Adversity to Prosperity Through the Choices You Make. And it is those competitive disadvantages that you turn into competitive advantages. I'd like to say that, where I come from doesn't have to dictate where I'm going. I'm a champion of never allowing your past to determine your future. And someone else's opinion doesn't have to become your reality. My earliest memory of life was living in a battered women's shelter. So that was my introduction of me. You know how they say that the first impression is the lasting impression. So if the first impression is the lasting impression, I remember the very first time I saw you live and in person. We were backstage, and that first impression when I saw you, I was like, this is somebody I need to know. Her energy, and I just watched you and I analyzed how you work the room and how you just show love to everyone. And that meant a lot to me, but that was my first impression. They say that, over 100 opinions are formulated in someone's first impression when you walk in the room, the way you carry yourself. So if that has that much power, how much more powerful would be the first impression of life? My first impression of life, the first thing I knew about me was I was in a homeless shelter. And then I later would find out because my father was an abusive alcoholic. So my mother left Fort Worth, Texas to San Jose, California, and the government put us up for protection. So I made a lot of bad decisions. I participated in the streets, had a felony arrest as a teenager, a lot of bad decisions. And, when I turned my life around, was at my homeboy's funeral who was murdered when I was in high school. And I gave my gun to the preacher because the mother stood in front of the casket and said, I forgive the young man who killed my son. And you talk about competitive advantage, those words that she said, for some reason, I was listening as a teenager and I said to myself, well, I don't love him like that. So I asked the preacher to meet me outside. I gave him my gun. I walked away from a lifestyle. And, since then, I've got the key to the city of Fort Worth, the same city that locked me up now gave me I'm a five-time number one best-selling author of the book, Building a Millionaire Mindset. So I'm saying all that to say this. When you talk about uncertainty and you turning it into a competitive advantage, I'm the heartbeat. I am the walking, talking billboard of what you just said. I sit before you now, multiple billions in revenue in over 100 countries around the world. raising up leaders, coaching people. I've coached over 40 people to 7 figures, hundreds of people to 6 figures. And I'm not saying that like Tony Robbins says, it's not to impress you, it's more to impress upon you. My past said I'm supposed to be an abusive alcoholic. My past says that I'm supposed to be, in prison like a lot of my friends, or in jail like my brother did 30 years in prison. That's my past, everything that has been studied about me, that's where I'm supposed to be, which leads me back to the first point. My past will not determine my future.
So let me ask you this. I really want to break this down because I listened to a story like that, and I'm fascinated by it. I mean, everybody's level of adversity is different in extremity, but people get stuck the same way. They get so stuck in the adversity. I like to say my personal story is I was so focused on what was holding me back, I couldn't find my path forward. But you went through that so easily. And I want to take you back to the day you handed the preacher the gun. Now,
Yeah.
you decided to change, but everybody around you, I'm sure, was remaining the same.
Wow.
And there had to be, I kind of call them the jaws. You're trying to climb up out of the sewer, but people grab onto your legs and try to pull you back down. What are some of the steps that you took not to go back to your comfort zone?
It's funny you say that because 2 of my homeboys who were sitting right next to me just got out of prison in the last 5 years.
Wow.
So you're talking about 1993 to just in the last 5 years. Every one of my homeboys, and I'm doing my best not to exaggerate, every one of them that were with me at that location would end up going to prison or jail. And the difference is I just made a decision not to be better than anybody else, but just a new version, a new better for me. When I was in the streets and I was participating in the streets, I wasn't doing it to be popular. I was doing it to get out. As a matter of fact, I was kind of ashamed. So that level of consciousness was there. I want you to imagine this Fresh Prince of Bel-Air type kid, like this kid that's a class clown, like just, my mouth would get me in so much trouble, but would also, create an atmosphere where, I could command a crowd for 30 minutes, in a cafeteria, just going nuts and wilding out and just being crazy. So I wasn't a weak person. I wasn't, and I tell people, if I'm going to use my, the slang of where I'm from is, I wasn't a chump in the streets. I wasn't weak. I wasn't a pushover. So why would I change my life and be weak? So the weakness of worrying about what other people would think about me never crossed my mind.
Wow.
And it's not because I'm better. It's almost like a superpower. And that's why I titled my book Mindset, Building a Millionaire Mindset. It has nothing to do with with making $1 million. It has everything to do with what it takes to be a self-generated first generation millionaire. There is a mindset. There's a breakthrough mindset that has to happen. So Meridith, I made a decision just to participate in my own rescue. I started to surround myself, and this is very key, very key. I began to surround myself around the thinking that outthinks me. There's a whole chapter in my book about it, is because, Les Brown says, you don't know what you don't know. And the worst thing that you could do, another Les Brown quote, is when you find yourself in the midst of hell, the worst thing you can do is stop.
Yeah, good point.
I refused to stop. I just refused to not. I had to keep going. That's why he's calling passing through, going through. You pass through. You're not supposed to stop.
Yeah. It's funny. I searched for years to a name for my business. I ended up calling it Motion First. And when people ask me about it, it's because I believe things happen through motion. Like you keep going and you'll find the path. So, all right. So I want to ask you, so you make that decision, you find the preacher, you hand over your gun. Yeah. You're still in the hood. You're still where you are. Yeah. How do you start to go? What are the steps that you took? As you look back on it now, I'm sure it was to some degree just humbling because you didn't know what you were doing. But, if you had to go back and advise somebody who was going to take the path, what are the steps to create from the hood to good to the millionaire mindset? What do you do?
it's really funny, Meredith, because I'm 49 years old and there's so many revelations I've had about me just in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Like I was the guy up until about 4 years ago. I thought I was like everyone else. I was just moving in motion faster, making decisions faster. I thought anybody can get on stage and do what I did if they truly wanted to. And it's like walking up to, saying LeBron James, anybody can do what he does. Nah, I know now what I didn't know then, that there was something activated in me that all I had to do was to participate. So saying all that to help you understand, when I gave my gun to the preacher, I asked him to meet me outside. It was at the wake, the night before the funeral, at the wake.
Yeah.
And I said, "Can you meet me outside?" And I gave him my gun, and he looked at me. He said, "You're not going to get it back." And I said, "I don't want it back." That night, I prayed at my teacher's house, because they kept us at the teacher's house to keep us out of trouble, to make sure we wouldn't go back to the streets where counselors watching us. And I prayed that night. I said, "God, please send somebody in my life that can help me stay on this path, stay on this motion of the way I feel right now, And the reason that I prayed that is because I have been there before. I've been there before, of knowing I was moving in the wrong direction and I had to make a change, and I would end up going back. The very next day at the funeral, there's girls sitting about 4 seats down from me. Now I want you to imagine this Will Smith character as a teenager, and I see these hot chicks at the funeral, and I'm like, "Yo, these girls ain't where I'm from. Like, who are these girls?" Right? So coincidence, well, not coincidence, as motion would have it, they would actually be at the teacher's house after the funeral, one more counseling session, and these two young ladies were there. One of them name was Crystal. Well, I would meet Crystal that day. Crystal has been my wife for 26 years.
Oh, wow.
So met her in 93, married in 98 at 22, and she was my answer. She was the reason that I started to act different and walk different and talk different, which led me to becoming a different person. I went to acting school. Fresh out of high school, was hard for me because, I want you to imagine being raised by this character, Samuel L. Jackson, in the movie Pulp Fiction.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
That character was my father. And there's a twist to the story because, bad husband doesn't mean bad father.
Yes.
My father was a horrible husband, but he ended up raising me. So I'm being raised by this super strong man that has the fear of God. I don't even know if that's the right word, but the look in his eyes. If you look at Samuel Jackson in that movie, I can relate to when he's reading that scripture. I can relate to having somebody talk to you with a gun in their hand. Like that was second nature for me. So being that guy, raised with that level of strength and that level of fear, has molded me and created me to who I am today, which I had to break generational curses.
Sure.
Almost on a daily basis to get to where I am right now. And the reason I brought up acting school is because I had to learn how to articulate. I had to learn, how do I use this gift? Now I can mimic anybody. I can mimic every character Eddie Murphy has ever done. I can mimic, Chevy Chase. Like I used to mimic these guys, Steve Martin. I would just mimic them and I would have their voice, but I didn't know how to do it with my voice for me. And finding my voice led me to the stage, led me to Les Brown, which has led Les Brown to say publicly on stage around the world that this is the next Les Brown. Like this is, and I love him for that, but there is no next Les Brown.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to be your own person.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Had you ever prayed for an answer before that day? Had you ever prayed for somebody to be sent to you?
Yeah. I've always prayed for favor, even in the midst of doing things unfavorable.
Yeah.
And it's weird, I'd be in the streets praying for protection. And I've been chased down with street machine guns and praying. Like, God, if you get me out of this. So having that conversation with God was kind of normal for me, but being obedient wasn't normal.
Yeah. Yeah. I always wonder, I always think, I'm such a believer that the crystals in our life are always there.
Yeah.
And they're always there. They're one touch away, but it's whether we're open to seeing it. I mean, I really believe that despite the obstacles and challenges in front of you, your path is there. It's whether
Yeah.
you choose to see your path or not.
I'm holding this up again because you're in my book right now. I call it frequencies. Like right now,
Oh, I love that.
we're live. There are people watching us around the world right now. They're going to rewatch this and watch it again and again and again. And while we're sitting in this room, while the individuals are sitting in the room that they're in right now, there are frequencies in that room. If I pull up an old school radio and I tune it to a certain station that tunes into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's going to pull down that frequency. If I turn on my, television right now and I tune into, a local news station, it's going to pull that frequency. And what I talk about is this: those frequencies are already in the room. They've always have been there. So when I talk about success, I talk about it as a frequency. When I talk about happiness, it's a frequency. Depression is a frequency. It's when you tune into it, it has no choice but to manifest for you when you tune into that frequency. So the frequencies have always been here. And I'm blowing my own mind because I thought like this in my early 20s. Thought that was normal. I always knew that I can tune into a frequency. If I wanted hate, I can tune into hate.
Yeah.
If I wanted love, I can tune into love. And I've always known at a very early age that I am in control of what station I'm tuned into at every moment, which makes me responsible. Responsibility, the key, the root word responsible. It's the ability to respond. And if you go deeper than that, it's ability, which means able. I talk about unlocking that code to be able to tap into frequencies to keep you in the driver's seat. Not perfect, but to keep you in the driver's seat. Meredith, the battered women's shelter happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Having abusive alcoholic father, that happened to me. My mother being unstable and jumping around, and that happened to me. Having a felony arrest, that happened to me. Living in poverty happened to me. It never happened in me.
Right. Great distinction.
Just because something happens to you doesn't mean you have to allow it to happen in you. Everything that happens to you is not supposed to happen in you. And that's why you got to be very careful to the frequencies that you tune into.
So, Johnny, let me ask you this, because this topic is so important. I was speaking. I was probably about a year ago. I was asked to come and speak to a group of disadvantaged youth. It's how they labeled them, disadvantaged youth. And we had about 300 kids in the room, and they wanted me to come in and talk about building networks and connections. And when I walked into the room, I showed up early because I wanted to see what they were doing. And when I walked into the room, they were doing that exercise that probably many of us have seen. Stand up if if you're a child of divorce. Stand up if a parent's gone to jail. Stand up if you have alcohol or drug addiction in your family. And the idea is that these kids stand up and they've had everything against them that they could possibly have against them. And here's what I saw was, as they stood up and they labeled everything that, in your words, had happened to them, I was watching the energy drain out of their bodies. Like they were ashamed and they felt victim to, and they felt blocked by. And I remember sitting there watching, and I thought, okay, I've had a family member go to jail. I've had family members die of addiction. I've been in an abusive relationship. I'm a product of divorce. And I completely switched my talk to like the biggest mistake I made in my life was it took me till I was 36 years old to realize that those were things that were not my fault. And if I could leverage them, like most people couldn't survive what I had been through. And that actually made me special, not damaged.
Yeah.
That's the way to put it. And where do we get these messages? Because I look at my life and like now I sort of think I'm a little bit of a badass because I'm not sure most people would have survived what I survived.
Most of us didn't
Yeah.
survive.
And so, but it took me
Yeah.
years to make that shift in my mindset. And the same thing with you is there you are and your buddies around you. Like nobody wants a life where you're going in and out of jail. I don't believe that. Nobody
Mm.
wants a life where you're addicted to alcohol and drugs. Nobody wants a life where either they're the abuser or they're the abused. But where do we get the message that when something happens to us, it makes us less than? And where do we find the support or the strength or the idea to turn it around?
You know, like this watch that I'm wearing right now, it went through abuse before it got to this level. It went through heartaches and reconstruction of a metal and breaking things down. And you can't appreciate something that's beautiful if you don't really understand what it went through to get to where it's at. So most things that we admire in life, diamonds, like there are things that we admire, precious things that we love, that we wouldn't have loved it in its raw form. It's what it's gone through to this, the level of abuse, the fire, the temperatures of the fire that it survived. So the only reason that someone would believe that they are the sum of what they were born into, and in my book, From the Hood to Doing Good, I actually start the book off talking about this. You know, most people are, you know, programmed to believe that life is like a hand of cards, and whatever hand you have the day that you're born is the hand you have to play for the rest of your life. And that is a lie from the pits of hell. Deception would not be deception if it were obvious. So let me say that again. Deception wouldn't be deception if it were obvious. When we are deceived, we're normally the last people to know. It's, you know, the outside world's looking at you saying, man, I see greatness in you. I talk about this in my book too, and it used to piss me off. And when teachers would say, you're a waste of talent. Like they would see something in me that I didn't see in myself. And when I went through the Les Brown speaking course in my early 20s, his mentor, Mike Williams, was always in the room, and he was kind of like Simon Cowell. He was a hard head. So everybody was scared to get, you know, his critique. I was hungry for his critique because I'm passing through. I'm not going to be a Les Brown junkie. I'm passing through. I'm here to learn so I can go do what you taught me to do. And I've done it around the world. But at that moment, I stood up after I spoke, and Les Brown doesn't say anything. He just says, Mike, tell me. And Mike is in the back of the room with several hundred people in the room. And he gets the microphone. He looks at Les and he says, he has it. And I look back at Les, and Les says, wow, like he's never heard Mike say that about anybody. And I was upset.
Oh, because you wanted,
like, no, critique me.
Yeah.
Like I'm here for iron to sharpen iron. I want to be the best communicator, the best speaker. I want to impact more people on this planet than anybody else had. So I was upset. And it took me back to the moment when the teachers would tell me, you have it. And you don't even know it. When you don't know you have it, it can eat you up from the inside. Yeah. So a lot of these kids that, especially who are in uncertainty, who have disadvantages so much that they don't see their advantages within the midst of the fire, you know, the pain that they're feeling is not just a pain of their reality. It's the pain of the absence of not understanding what their purpose is and who they are. And those are the individuals that have the power to shake the world. You know, I look at disadvantages of people who think they're better than other people. If your parents raised you to believe that because of the color of your skin, male, female, whatever your religious beliefs are, that you're better than someone else, your disadvantage is far greater than the disadvantage of someone who's living in poverty, because that person living in poverty can see up. You who think you're better than other people, you're looking down instead of looking up.
And not realizing that that's probably one of the biggest fault that I see of leaders is not understanding that you can learn and you can grow from everybody around you. The really exceptional leaders that I see are so open to advice, input, and feedback, and they don't care where it come from. They have like a blanket respect for individuals and ideas, and are so, I call it being confidently humble. You're so confident that you know you can make anything a success, but you're so humble that you don't believe that you have all the answers, or don't believe that you're better than somebody else.
You know, I love that, because normally when I go speak, especially if I'm in the islands, if I go speak in Barbados or St. Lucia or Jamaica and places like that, I always negotiate, and this is for free. You pay me to speak, you fly me out, no matter where it is in the world. I've done this all over the world: South Africa, Johannesburg, Zimbabwe, even Australia, even in Israel. I always ask, can I speak to the youth while I'm here? And I said, you guys organize it, set it up. I'll do it for free. This is me giving back while I'm there. And there's a hidden agenda, selfish agenda for me, is because that's where I learn the people. If I can talk to your kids, I'll know you. I'll know what you need. I'll know what you lack. I'll know where you're hurting, where you're suffering, where your hope is. And I spoke in Wine Dance, New York. Have you ever been to Wine Dance, New York?
I have not.
Okay. Wine Dance, New York is on Long Island. Time magazine did a story on them in, I want to say 2004-ish. They did a story on them. They called them the absolute worst school district, most dangerous school district in the nation. So what happens when a publication of authority, a voice of authority, labels something? They begin to portray it even more.
Sure.
So they're bringing me in to dismantle this thing, Time magazine strapped up on them. And so when I go in, I say, I want to speak to the teachers. I want to speak to the parents. I want to speak to the parents and the teachers. And then I want to speak to the youth. And I want to speak to the youth and the parents and the teachers. Here's why. If I come in and speak to the teachers, if I come in and speak to the leaders of the community, and I don't speak to the youth, and if I come in and speak to the youth, but I'm not speaking to the leaders, that means you're sitting at home at a dinner table. One of you are empowered. The other one is in the exact same mindset.
Right.
I need to be able to grasp the entire thing. That's where change comes from. My good friend Gary Eby said that change is a door that can only be opened from the inside.
Oh, I love that.
Got to get inside. I've got to get inside, because you are really the only person that can change anything. My job, our job as speakers, is to echo the truth. It's their job to open the door to accept the truth.
Yeah, I'm such a big believer that if you want things to change, begin by changing yourself. Johnny, it is hard to believe we are at the end of this podcast. I always like to end with, I know it has gone fast, so you need to come back on because we got a lot more to discuss. Two things. Number one, I tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can get your books, follow you because you need to. The message is incredible. The other question is, as I look at the world that we're in today, and I see, oh my gosh, so much working against rather than with, so much competitive and desire for others to fail rather than looking to collaboration. And what is your biggest piece of advice for business owners, for leaders, for individuals out there about what they can really do to start to turn their own uncertainty and adversity into competitive advantage?
First of all, at Wimbrey on all social media handles, at Wimbrey, my last name, coachjohnny.com. I'm literally right now on the hunt to find the mindsets that I can interview. Particularly seven-figure mindsets, people who have been seven-figure earners or seven-figure producers, helping people understand how how I participated at the highest level as a professional speaker without even becoming a famous professional speaker. How I've been able to make millions as a speaker, but also millions as an entrepreneur. That's something that I wanted to balance delicately, because I didn't want to have to depend on the source of speaking as an income.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak. So when I speak, I find business partners.
Yes.
Like everywhere I go, when I'm coaching someone, and I coach a lot of business, high profile business individuals and people who want to be, anybody at the bottom who wants to be at the top, and anybody at the top who wants to go higher. I coach these individuals, and I don't have a cookie cutter coaching system. I analyze those individuals as individuals. And it's amazing how many of those people I'm doing business with today who are my business partners. One of them, we launched a film company 2 years ago, and we have a new movie coming out next month called Summer of Violence, which is a true story out of Denver, Colorado of 1993, Summer of Violence. So that movie comes out next month. Well, I was coaching this lady who is a Hollywood actress who wanted to learn how to become a professional speaker. And now we're business partners doing multiple $1 million in production in the movie world. So it's not just about, me working with individuals and helping them. It's analyzing them to see if there's a fit. So if there's anybody out there who wants to talk about coaching or possible joint ventures, go to coachjohnny.com, fill out the form. I'll set up a formal meeting with you. The book is available everywhere. Everywhere a book can be sold. It's done by McGraw-Hill, one of the largest publishers in the world. And it's an audio book as well. You can download it right now. It's brilliant. This book I wrote as a roadmap to my children. If anything was ever to happen to me, the subtitle is How to Use the Pillars of Entrepreneurship to Gain, Maintain, and Sustain Long-Lasting Wealth. Well, we gained it, but now we got to sustain it for long-lasting wealth. So I wrote a book to my children on the principles of how we got here. If there's somebody who's listening right now and you are in business and you don't have a fresh voice, something fresh and this goes for me too. When I meet somebody like you, Meridith, I need a fresh voice, someone who's going to, kind of just push me into a higher level of dimension. Remember, you got to surround yourself around the thinking that outthinks you. So if you are in business and you want, Tony Robbins said you got to, participate on your rescue. If you're at 6 figures a year, you want to be rescued into multiple 6 figures, go to coachjohnny.com. If you are at 6 figures, you want to go to 7 figures, go to coachjohnny.com. Like I've done billions in revenue on a global scale in languages I can't even speak, because the art of joint ventures, the art of collaborations. You just said that. It's the art of collaborating without being intimidated. Let me show you how to do it.
I love that. Well, you have been amazing. I am excited to continue to expand this relationship. I'm excited to have you back on here. We have so much to talk about. So, all right. Thank you, Johnny, for a fantastic interview. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to turn uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. Remember, I am on a movement. I want people to believe that adversity and disruption, just beyond it, is your greatest opportunity. Join us.
Can I share my favorite quote? My favorite quote in the world. My favorite quote in the world by William Ward. Adversity causes some people to break, but it causes others to become record breakers. Meridith, you are a record breaker. Thank you for having me on.
I love that quote. All right. We'll see you right back here next